Win up to £25,000. The Community Lottery, a subscription-based lottery that allows you to continue to support good causes that matter. When you win, good causes win. Every month, eligible good causes have the opportunity to win a share of funds that could help them continue the good work that they do in our communities. To apply, there's no complicated forms, nor do you have to be a registered charity. Just grab your phone, send us a 60-second video explaining your good cause and the difference having extra funding would make to your project. Visit thecommunitylottery.com. Hit the play button and sign up for either 13 weekly draws or by direct debit for just £4.35 that gives you 4 weekly draws. You could have the chance of winning £25,000. The aim of the Community Lottery is to create an additional source of funding that will enable good causes to undertake innovative projects that matter. If you're in, the communities win.
Hello, and welcome to another weekly edition of What a Week right here on MediaNet Live TV with, of course, myself, Mr. C, and my co-host, Mr. Tony Crossbody, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. C. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Tony.
Apologies for the lateness, everyone. Sorry, we had some technical issues which almost threatened our broadcast, but we made it through. And now we're here. Give thanks.
By hook or by crook, we will make sure we will hear. So yes, you may see a little bit of interference with my signal, ladies and gentlemen, but hopefully our trusted technician has got all sorted now. But as Tony said, good evening to each and all. Thank you so much for your patience. I know we're running slightly late, but however, it's better to be here than not at all.
Yes. And I'm jealous, Mr. C. I'm jealous because there's someone in our audience, one of our viewers who is in Jamaica right now, making us jealous. That's Carolyn.
Yeah.
Even Mr. C, even Tony Crossbody, bless up. Greetings from Jamdown.
Yeah, Carolyn.
That's all I got to say to you, Carolyn.
All I've got to say to Carolyn, and a time for you for reach your yard. A time for you for come back home now, you know, and experience some of the snow.
No.
Tony, listen, how's the temperature affected your cockles, sir? Because my cockles have been chilly. I'm telling you that from now. You know, the British are always talking about, oh, it warms the cockles of me heart. I'm telling you, my cockles and my heart are freezing this week, mate.
You know what, though? It wasn't bad, innit? We only had a day. And it wasn't even a whole day. It was just like a couple of hours. And, you know, to be honest, that's the thing I like about the UK is that you don't get sustained periods of snowing, man. Yeah, you know, not like when you go to Canada or the northeastern United States, man. If you're ever out there, you know what snow really is all about.
You know, those places where you're talking like -16, -20, that there's severe severe snowstorms. So yeah, we're grateful that what was the storm they called it? Was it Randolph, or whatever? For once, they never give it a black name. Storm Jeremy, I think it was.
So let's say good evening to Hadriana. How you doing? Angela, nice to see you. And hey, look, Carolyn, she's just rubbing salt in the wound, talking about how she's in 81 degrees.
Yeah, but
Carolyn, you're not allowed to talk about Jamaica for the rest of the show.
That's it, yeah, mate. You're on a ban, mate. Yeah, absolute ban. For those of you, I should say, joining us for the very first time, we welcome you. We welcome you. Please, for everybody, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share, because the more people get to hear, the more our people are informed. And it's very good for us to be informed. 2021 is going to be a special year for each and every single one of us, and we need to share the good news amongst us all. So, Tony, this week, what can we say, man? We've seen some interesting things develop over the weekend as regards to elections and various other things. We've had some interesting sports things which have happened. However, the most important thing I think we have to kick off with today is the well-being and the state of mind as regards to people in relationships.
Oh my goodness. And to help us with that, I saw a very interesting article that came out a few days ago. Maybe we could just put it on the screen so that we can see it. But it's all about how relationships have been in jeopardy because of the COVID.
Wow. So listen, those of you who are saying hello in the comments, we want to hear your views, people. Those of you watching on Facebook or on YouTube, we invite you for your thoughts and your views as regards to all of the subjects and topics that we've got and are covering today. So yeah, so how COVID-19 has changed the rules for relationships. Let's start off with a quote from Sir Winston Churchill, who once quipped, "My wife and I tried to breakfast together, but we had to stop or our marriage would have been wrecked." Winston, he really was black. My wife and I tried breakfast together, but soon we have to stop that because the marriage has got broke up.
Say good evening to Karen James. Hi, Karen. Hi, Jackie. And T Smooth. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Denise, as well. So, I mean, look, because when we think about it, like breakfast back in the day, because most couples do not get up and leave the house at the same time. Right. A lot of couples are on different time scales. It's only in the evening where they now join again on time, on time scales and convene as one as a couple. But a lot of times they're passing ships throughout the day. So, you get used to your little comfort zone, and you have your little your croissant, or you have your little cornflakes, or you have your cornmeal porridge, by yourself, your little crumpet by yourself, Now, all of a sudden, your partner's with you 24/7, so you can't even get a little bite to eat in peace. Putting strains on people, man. What are people experiencing? Are you finding that, now that you're with your partner 24/7, that you find that for once you are now eating together and that's brought you more closer together? Or are you finding that every single time me lift up my spoon for take a little bit of my cornflakes, me see her right there looking at me again, getting on my nerves?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? If we can pull up the next slide, something interesting that UK law firms have noticed.
Well, we're just going to read that. Carolyn is saying the pandemic has forced some people to actually spend time with their partners that they wouldn't usually. And I think people are finding out that they don't like them. Ooh, jokes aside, some are working and living in close proximities and it's just too much. For others, they're rekindling and falling in love all over again and doing more together. So some very good points there. Thank you very much, Carolyn.
And some of them have flown off to Jamaica because they can't take it.
Yeah.
So jump on a plane.
Mid-year. So read that for me, please, Tony. UK law firm.
Yeah, so it was very hard. WFH. What does that mean? Not
working
sure what that
from
means.
home. Working from home.
Working from home. Sorry. Okay. Yes, Angela. It was very hard working home with hubby. I wanted to cry. It's difficult. It's difficult. You know. And then she says, "I was happy when he went back to work in May."
That's Angela.
Angela, you know, you gotta love Angela. Angela's just so honest. You know, she just tell you as it is.
Oh, bless, man. Bless.
Look what it says there, Mr. C. It says UK law firms are reporting a rise in divorce inquiries compared to last year. In one case, as much as 122%. Similar trends can be seen across the world in the US, China, Sweden. Regardless of the country's individual pandemic strategy, marriages have yet been another casualty because of the virus.
So yeah, I mean, it's easy to imagine how, you know, the stresses of the pandemic has taken its toll on people, you know, financially. Of course, some people who say, like for myself, for example, you know, like probably I've seen at least 7/10 of my income has gone. You know, again, so some people are finding themselves now where they may have been sharing the bills 50-50. Now that person cannot provide the way how they provided before. Does that make them feel less of a man, less of a woman, or less of an equal partner in a relationship? So that could be one. Again, this whole thing of having dreams together, for those of you planning marriages, for example, do you find now that you're starting to have, how can I put it, ill feelings towards your future fiance or partner, because they're not putting equally into this pot for the big day, for the big wedding, because their job has their income has decreased.
Yeah.
So many different situations and scenarios.
So T Smooth says, when the wife and I were working, we missed each other, and Teeth calls to chat, cuddled. We then retired and enjoyed a new age by taking long holidays and things. But the lockdown, have we put a knockdown? No escape.
Oh.
I hope the wife ain't watching the show. Watching the show.
He goes further to say, in the morning when I wake, he's singing Tom Jones, "Please release me."
Please release me, let me go.
Oh, too funny, too funny. Too funny, Steve. Thank you.
So Carolyn says, I thank the Lord my hub's been working the whole time, apart from the first 2 weeks last year when it was fab, and we did lots of stuff together, including schooling together. Right. So it's all right for a little while, isn't it? But imagine the pandemic is now almost a year old, and some people have been at home for that whole time.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, look, it's, you know, when you're with somebody 24/7, I mean, like, what you got to look at, this is as close to solitary confinement as you could get. Because you know, especially over from just before Christmas, Boris has said, stay inside, stay indoors, only go out once a day to get an hour's worth of exercise, preferably with that one person who's in your bubble. So even when you go outside for fresh air now, you find that it's either you go out on your own or you have to go out with the person who you're trying to get some fresh air from.
Yeah, it's tough. And then can you imagine those elderly parents who a lot of us aren't getting to see, you know, who've been stuck in the house for many, many months, and how they are feeling. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, you know, companionship is a human necessity, I think, Tony. And again, when you're deprived of it, and also deprived of because we know we all have got different types of friendships or relationships with people, which provide different levels of comfort and support. And when you're kind of confined to just one person, that really does become a challenge. Where, you know, now do you expect to apply all of that pressure on your partner or who you're living with to supply you with all of those different energies and relationships and emotions that you would get from your vast array of friendships? So yeah, I can see how it could be stressful and how it can put a strain on relationships.
Mm. So Adriana says, I have been in isolation this whole time, but I feel blessed that me and my partner are cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So sometimes it's, you just got to have two people that understand that at some time the other person does need space, and space away from you, and it's nothing personal. Some people just need some personal space for a little time.
Good evening, Lady Million. Well said there. There are people that are challenged with loneliness. 100%. And again, I think even, what about, Tony, those people who are in relationships have identified that they've got problems within the relationships, but then they've had support, external support, i.e. they've been going, might be once a week or once a month or periodically for counseling. Now finding that they're having to be counseled at home.
Yes.
Can you still get the same kind of support? I mean, if you know that, you're talking about, can't stand the way how he blah, 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 but he's next door.
I can't stand him.
And he's got his ear to the wall, and all right, yeah, all right.
Glass.
You understand? And now he's the one who's making dinner this evening. I think I'm going to eat out to help out, mate.
Yeah. So we can ask the viewers if they have any tips. If you're able to successfully navigate this COVID with your partner, can you give us some tips in the comments of how you managed to do that? And then we could sort of share it, perhaps with other people who are struggling at the moment, because unbeknownst to us, there are people on the verge of breaking up. And they're forced to live together under those circumstances.
Definitely. And Angela's correctly said that domestic violence is at an all-time high at the moment as well.
Yes, indeed.
So, let's look at that. So, what strategies have you implemented within your household to keep the peace and the harmony? Have you found new ways to bring the love within the four walls? Or have you had to kind of, have you just gone back to old school ways of, again, the pleasure of just eating together, dining together, watching certain programs together? What have been your strategies for coping and still keeping love fresh during COVID-19? Let us know.
Yeah. Evening, Patrick. How you doing, brother? Nice to see you. Or maybe some of them have converted the basement, Mr. C, and put a door and a lock and got inside there and lock that door in the basement. Don't come out.
I was speaking to one of my friends about this particular topic earlier on, and they said what she's done. She's introduced games into the household, not just for her and her husband, but also for her children as well. So on a Friday evening, everybody's laptop gets closed at 5:30. Everybody's phone gets put to one side. And first of all, they start with a meal. They start with having dinner together as a family and speak about how their week went, the good and the bad. And then at 8 o'clock, they play family games. So each week, one person of the family has to completely make up a set of games for them to play during the night. So it might be just a quiz, something as simple as a quiz. If you've really been a little bit late, it might be playing a game like Monopoly or Scrabble or whatever it is. Or again, it may be something like playing charades. So again, that's what one family is doing to try and bring a little bit of peace and harmony into not just the relationship, but into the family as well. So let us know what other things you guys have been doing as well to keep the harmony within your relationships.
Tony, that's a wonderful idea, though, Mr. C. To your friend there, and you've got to kind of think like that. Part of the problem with relationships is that couples spend all their time effectively bringing up children, and it's amazing how many couples don't really know each other. They know each other through the children, and then you often find, and this is quite common, where the children grow up and leave home, and the husband and wife say, "Well, who are you?" And you often find that they end up divorcing, or maybe divorce was planned some years ago, and then now that the kids are gone, they realize, actually, I don't really like you. And And that is exacerbated by the fact. Imagine, and these are people who go out to work every day. They don't see each other except for evening times and weekends, right? And then and they really have alone time. It's always around the children or the family. Now you're locked together. You can't go anywhere. Your kids are probably grown, and you're there in a house. And now you're looking for an exit.
Yeah, man. It's. Well, look, they're saying that because of the high numbers, especially in places like China and India, strangely enough, where, you usually look at those kind of countries as countries where, the forging of relationships usually are life-lasting. But again, the numbers are really high. So again, people are saying that once we come out of a lockdown, possibly couples should give it a month or two, have a little cooling off period before you make a hasty decision, such as you want a divorce or you want a separation, or you actually you can't wait to see the back of that person. Give yourself a little bit of time first and foremost, because it might just be you're suffering from the COVID blues.
I tell you what, though, I tell you, probably the happiest couples are the ones who probably just met, who are going through this. They're going through the honeymoon period, like the last few months.
Yes.
Which is helping them through the COVID, because obviously they're so excited about each other, and they're probably the happiest couples right now. I think it's the established ones that are probably having challenges.
Well, I think one of the main reasons for that, Tony, is because they're now having to communicate more effectively, most likely. So they're having long and engaged telephone conversations because they can't possibly see each other depending on their location. And so, yeah, it's forcing them to find out more about each other as opposed to substitutes. Oh, I'll tell you what are you doing this weekend? Right, there's a dance at Dougie's, or blah blah blah. Let's go for a rave, or let's go pictures, or you see what I mean, Tony? So now they're having to actually sit down and properly communicate with each other, as opposed to using functions as a way of building the relationship.
Right.
So,
right. Adriana says, I'm feeling it for the families facing abuse at home. Oh my goodness, yes.
Carolyn says, all three of us cook. My son Jacob bakes, and we watch or do it all together. We all have our own individual online groups that we do for ourselves. That replaces the time we would be not usually the time we would be usually be with others. But actually, not much has changed, and we always have retained a bubble from the start. Sod the GUV. Yeah,
I mean, Mr. C, if there are couples out there, struggling and needing help, I mean, what can they do at a time like this, do you think?
Oh, boy, at a time like this, I think that what they have to do is they need to spend some quality time together, and first, number one, discuss it. Discuss what's not working for you, what the problem, because sometimes it's just a bit of space. You might just need a little bit of personal space. That's what it is. Depending again on what type of individual you are. Some people cannot think if other people are around them. They need to have that little quality time. Some people need reassurance from individuals that everything's going to be okay, that things are going to sort themselves out. So they need that constant conversation, where some people need that little. So again, you just got to really have that communication between yourselves as regards to, number one, is if there is an issue where you're starting to feel a little bit of resentment, you've got to let the other person know. Number one, I think. Number two, what is it that you require? What's going wrong for you? What have you identified as being the problem for yourself? And is there a way that your partner can support you through it, or is there something that you need to do in order to get that situation or that problem dealt with? I think anyway. And again, identify key people who could give you sound advice and knowledge. Not just going to take what you're saying and just so about it, but can actually give you some sound advice or encouragement. For those of you who are suffering, and again, it's probably difficult on a platform like this to talk about the problems that you're going through. There is an organization called the Black African and Asian Therapy Network. Their website is baatn.org.uk. They have a selection of Black and also Asian therapists who could possibly offer you some kind of support. But again, it's about trying to have that communication with your so-called partner and letting them know that you're actively looking for some kind of support, and your support may be at 3 o'clock on a Thursday or 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Well, not 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, because you're getting your support right here. So that, no 7 o'clock on Tuesday is what a week. So 7 o'clock on possibly a Wednesday evening, and say to your partner, look, I want to have a meeting with my therapist. Do you mind going for your walk at that time? So I've got a little bit of privacy, and I can actually discuss the things that I'm going through. So again, it's just about having that open conversation and trying to be respectful, I think. What about yourself?
Caroline just posted www.blackmindsmatter.org.
Thank you, Caroline.
For those of you who think that you need that assistance and help. No, I agree with you, Mr. C. Sometimes though the problem isn't anything to do with COVID. There's just a fundamental problem in the relationship, and COVID has just exposed that big time. So, as has been pointed out, I certainly feel a conversation, but I think I would, even if I resented I don't think I would use that word directly to them and say I'm resenting you right now. More like I'm feeling stressed due to our situation, the relationships. I feel it's pushing us apart. Do you know what I mean? I mean, language is very important when you're communicating.
100%.
With a very sensitive topic like this. But everything you said is absolutely true. I think I just read that Denise Francis said it's not a good time to start a relationship. It is for a man, Denise. It's a good time for a man to start a relationship.
It's always a good time for a man to start a relationship. Always. It's always good in the beginning, Tone. It's always good in the beginning, mate. She's like an angel in the beginning. She is. Oh my God. Can't wait for you to meet my mum.
All right. We'll break up when the COVID's over.
Yeah. Coming to the end of the relationship. I can't wait for her to meet her maker, mate. But listen, as we're saying, it really has got peaked, because even I think one of the organizations, Relate, was saying that they've seen now a big surge in demand for their services. And again, it usually does happen after Christmas, because that's the time again where a lot of people are actually staying at home together. But they're saying that the impact because of COVID has been absolutely tremendous. And they're now seeing individuals contacting them from their cars, from their sheds, and all sorts of places. Again, in car parks, women are saying that, I'm going out to do the shopping, and they're actually spending half an hour in the supermarket car park on a helpline, trying to get that kind of support that they need. So, it is literally serious, because a lot of people are finding themselves living with their partners, and they're unable to speak to anybody about what they're going through, because their partners are there 24/7.
And then not to mention the children, particularly if you've got young ones, how stressed they are to be in a stressful environment that they can feel.
Denise Francis adds, what about those poor suffering people who are having affairs? Oh my gosh, their dolly house is now mashed up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All those people have run out of excuses.
Completely. I'm just going to top up the gas, but we're on direct debit. Oh, is it? I'm just going on top the roof to check the satellite dish. We're on cable.
All the excuses.
Damn it, woman, I need to get away from you. My side woman is waiting for me.
All the excuses have run out, man.
Yeah.
So look, let's switch gears a little bit, and we can come back to this if you've got any comments on this particular subject. But what struck me during this last week, Mr. C, was
Go on.
I think everybody saw it, was the elections that, or not the elections, the actual inauguration of the new American president and the vice president.
Yep, Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, and VP Kamala Harris.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, Kamala Harris, yes. And I think a lot of hope, particularly from Black people, on this administration, hoping that there may be some change. There has been a huge, monumental effort on the part of a lot of Black activists to get this president in, to get the vice president in the hope, of course, that things will change for Black people, because people haven't, a lot of people haven't been happy with the last 4 years. So they're looking for change. But it's quite interesting.
I think Tony, we rightly so. I think there's got to be some excitement. For the first time, the second in command of the USA is a Black woman.
Right.
Regardless of whether she's 100% Black or the fact that we've got a woman of color as vice president for the United States of America, it seems like it's something we should be celebrating. And again, I can see why there's so many accolades being poured upon her, and saying, it's a big plus for Black women, women of color, for women in general.
Right.
It shows progress. It shows that, hope. And in some corners, I can almost feel the same kind of energy like when Obama was made president, Tony.
Indeed.
Indeed. However, my mum would always say, all that glistens is not always gold.
Right.
She would
just because a book is shiny on the cover, you kind of have to read the book to work out whether you're going to buy into it.
Yeah. So, what does Kamala stand for? Because I know I've heard one or two things, which I've taken with a pinch of salt, to be honest with you. Her record as regards to when she was a district prosecutor, I do believe her numbers as regards to incarcerating Black men were significantly high. But I thought, well, if that's her job, and if Black men are guilty in front of you, then that's your job. Do you know what her viewpoints are as regards to any other kind of political kind of policy at all?
Well, it's funny you say that, because this next video that we're just about to play for you is an interview where she's asked a very interesting question, and I want the viewers to look at the way she answers the question. Let's roll that video.
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century.
Sorry, can we stop the video there, please?
We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists.
Right, can we start that again from the very beginning? Because we need to hear the question that was being asked so that we know what she's answering.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners. because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
So what was the answer? It was a very simple question.
Oh, she's good. I like her, you know, Tony. She's good.
She's a politician, boy.
She's more than she a politician with swag. Did you see the little bounce on the answer to the and what? She nearly clapped back, you know. She nearly, oh, she's good. She didn't answer the question. Yeah, she's good. She's good though.
So the question is, do you support African Americans quest for reparations? Right? It was simply a yes or no answer.
Mm.
And then she started to she did a whole history talk, like, and did you see the way the woman with the interview was looking at her? Like, she just knew it wasn't going to be positive. She just sort of up. So she started to give a whole history about slavery and Jim Crow and all the rest of it, but then ended it by saying, "Look, am I doing anything specific for Black? No. What we do is going to benefit everyone."
So Camilla,
you know, this is the thing. This is a person who a lot of Black people in America and here in the UK put a lot of energy into as a model, right?
Well, Denise Francis says, "Mina trust none of them." Donna Ben says the question was, "Do you believe in reparations?" Yeah, interesting history. Phil says painted him in bad light for reason. Same way trying to hide Biden's affection for kids and smelling females' hair. Biden's got some wiggy ways, 100%. He has got some wiggy ways. Probably how can I put it? His preferred sensory connection with people is the sense of smell, possibly. Who knows? But he has got a very, very weird and wiggy way of dealing with females, and especially young girls as well. Right.
Now remember, the likelihood is that she is going to be president, because Biden's age and his health and all that probably won't stand the whole presidency. Now, Anne-Marie says, well, hopefully she means business and stands by her words. Well, I don't know what you mean by that, Anne, because she said she doesn't support Black people's quest for reparations. So she probably does mean what she says when she says that. She's not in it. What she's saying is that what she's doing is, if she does anything, it's for all of America.
Yeah.
So that was right. Go on.
Yeah, but I think this is the thing. What we have to start accepting this as people of a democratic society, is that when we elect somebody, we elect them to represent all the people, not just one fraction or one, subdivide of the whole of the people. So whatever she does, it has to reflect on the rest of society, definitely. So if she does anything which just affects Black people, surely that's a wrong thing to do, no?
Well, I guess on the surface of things, that's an argument, right? But the whole point is that you are second in command of the free world, right? So you have a weight of influence. Now, whether you can do anything about reparations or not, at least just say, well, I support the right of it, even though that would be a very difficult challenge because of X, Y, Z.
I mean, look, let's look at this. Reparations. Where's the money going to come from? America is on the rocks. They're in debt. Where are they going to get this money from to pay all the descendants of slavery?
I agree with you. I agree. There's some issue with the logistics. My question is, whether you just support the principle of that.
I mean, look, let's go on. Sorry, Tony.
So the principle being an injury has been done, and therefore justice demands a compensation. We have that in this system all the time. So the principle of reparations, he's saying no. She ain't following that. Now, I can understand that person saying, well, yeah, I definitely do, but how are we going to do it? What's the logistics? It's going to be extremely difficult. We'd have to do this. But she's not saying that. She's saying, no, I'm not supporting that.
Well, I think before Black people can ask for reparations, they need to work out how it's going to be dealt with before we start asking other people for reparations. Because look, let's face it, yeah, there's some of us in our families, yeah, some of us have got children. We don't even want to give our children £100 because we know that that child is going to recklessly spend it. Never mind if they get reparations for. We know we've got people in our family and in our friendship groups who are depending on certain substances. If all of a sudden they get anything between 1,000 to God knows how much, it's gonna go up their nose, in their arm, whatever. That it's gonna go down their throat.
Right.
So realistically, what are we gonna do with reparations? How is it gonna benefit us as a people, as opposed to us receiving things individually for us to only go out and buy 20 pairs of Nike Air Force Ones?
I hear that, but
a brand new BMW. How does that benefit the community? So I think there needs to be a strategy as regards to reparations and how it can effectively help our communities as regards to just individually we're receiving windfalls. Right.
So my issue here is it's you said about giving a child pocket money because they're going to spend. If we were to take your illustration and apply it to her, what she's saying is that you don't deserve pocket money. It's not about I'm concerned about how you're going to spend the money. You're not even getting it. I'm against the principle of giving you pocket money. That's the problem. She's not saying I'm against it because logistically how is this going to work? And no, she says no. I'm not supporting a move towards reparations. Point blank.
No, I think what she said was if there was a school and there was deprived children in that school, she wouldn't just look at the Black deprived children. She'd look at all the deprived children. And therefore, because Black people have been deprived more than anybody else, therefore, all the Black children who are deprived would get in that particular program. And again, she kind of finished it. That's why I said she's very smart. She finished it with saying, well, look, whatever that Black child gets or those deprived people get benefits the whole of society, because therefore they should no longer by default be deprived of the very things which are keeping them down and keeping them low. So we'll just have to watch and see whether her track record speaks for itself, whether she's a woman of honor or she's just a politician.
Okay, so hold that thought. We're now going to see another brief opinion of hers, right? And I'm not going to tell you what the question is, but watch the enthusiasm, right? Watch the enthusiasm and the desire to act. Let's watch this next video.
And then we'll come to some of the comments afterwards as well.
Right. Yeah.
Now chat show says they are all crooks. Whilst we're waiting for the clip.
There we go.
Here we go.
Killing us. How do we get those men to stop killing trans women of color? We are hunted.
I know.
Systematically hunted.
I know.
How do we do that?
No, I you're right. And so, but I'm just saying, I want you to be able to talk. That's what I'm saying. It's a number of things. I mean, one, there has to be serious consequence and accountability when it happens, which means there needs to be a safe place for the members of our transgender community to go when they have been exposed to that kind of harm. And we know there's not always a safe place. I will tell you, when I was district attorney of San Francisco, it was after the tragedy of Gwen Arahu, Matthew Shepard, and other cases where people were being killed. And what was happening in courtrooms is that if the killer was caught and arrested and charged, in the courtroom, they would offer a defense. It was called the gay or trans panic defense. You remember that? And they'd say, oh, I freaked out, therefore I didn't have the state of mind for which you can convict me of murder. And I saw this happening. So I convened prosecutors from around the country, first ever time it ever happened, to come to San Francisco, and we created a whole training on how to defeat the gay trans panic defense. And we brought in and this was in the early 2000s, and brought in, I say with pride that there are a lot of the leaders early leaders in the trans community who came from San Francisco. And so we brought in these leaders to talk about the community, to talk about how the issue is playing out, to talk about the injustices. And it ended up being a model for what needs to happen around also what we do around public safety, to make sure that it does not go without consequence. I hear you.
So, look at the passion.
She's good, man.
Look at the passion.
She's good.
Yeah. Look at the activity. Look at her record as to what she's done. And hey, she's doing what she's doing. But the contrast,
look, in her defense, I'm going to say that she is there talking about something which she has done. So therefore, she can talk about it from a passionate place, because that's something where obviously it was a strategy that she's implemented. It was successful. And she's now trying, as she's just said, she's trying to get it spread throughout the country. So I suppose it's something which is quite dear and personal to her. Tony is the only defense I can offer. But there is definitely a contrast between the energies of how she dealt with that question as regards to reparations and how she's dealing with this particular question. I just want to go through to some of the comments. There's so many. So if you pick out a few, please, Tony.
Right. So Donald says, so we can isolate the transgender community, but not the black community. Why is that? Why are we the only demographic that has to be lumped in with everybody else? Donald, I'm going to do a whole show about that, and I'll show you I'll show you the whole history of that. We'll cover that next couple of weeks. What else? Carolyn says, so happy to have a strategic plan. Is that right? Am I looking at the right thing? I'm so happy to have a strategic Pan-American plan for the transgender community, but not her own. It is what it is. Who else? Now chat. The passion will always be for same-sex, where am I looking at? Same-sex relationships. That's their focus. Wasn't she involved in the stop and frisk search?
I'm not sure 100%, but again, we could look into that and see. Jarina Starr says, would the African American community organize though and demand their reparations, though the men seem to have a wishful thinking? If you ask, you will not get. You have to demand and fight for it. Very, very good point. No longer about asking, it's about demand. Well done, well done.
Who else is there?
Yeah,
S-Bit McCoy, good evening. Says, you guys need to understand that she adapts to whatever subject matter keeps her retained in her position. That's why she's Indian or black when it suits. When we understand how politicians really enable their power, then we will see the loopholes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
So look, I think it's a bit early to see the true intentions of Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. I think time and history will clearly indicate where she sits as regards to her duties as regards to country and also her responsibilities as regards to race. However, if we look in the past, Tony, I think we've been here before when we've seen politicians of a certain hue rise through the ranks. And there seems to be, again, this dual burden of responsibility of the flag and responsibility of your culture. If we look back, who can we think of as regards to American who's had a position of power oh gosh, names just
Are
escaped me.
you thinking about Condoleezza Rice by any chance?
Corned beef and rice, as I used to call her back in the day, because it's black, but it's not rice and peas.
So I think we have some footage of her in a little interview. It's not the next to the producer. It's not the next 2 videos. It's the 3rd one down with the Condoleezza Rice video.
Yeah, let's just keep. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, my bad. And say this may not be the time to negotiate. Do you think that the president needs to be taking more care on those issues when he discusses race and when he discusses immigrants?
I do. And I've said, I think that particularly from the White House, you need language that recognizes how raw race is as a factor in America. I grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. All right, I understand race and racism and the like. But I'm going to tell you, Margaret, I think that we could all be better in the way that we deal with this very raw nerve, which is race. I think it's time to stop labeling each other and using explosive terms like she's a racist, he's a racist. That stops the conversation, right? When you say that, that's meant to stop the conversation. And we need to have a conversation. We also need to, and I say this very often to my students, identity is a wonderful and marvelous thing. I am tremendously proud of my ancestors who survived the horrors of slavery, came out of it, and by the time of my grandfather were being college educated. I'm tremendously proud of that legacy. But I also know that identity has to be something that you don't use against others. Mm-hmm. And so to the degree that we are breaking ourselves into ever smaller groups with ever larger senses of grievance and ever different narratives, I don't think anybody is doing very well at helping us to navigate this extraordinarily difficult minefield of race.
Our full conversation with Secretary Rice is on our website, facethenation.com.
Okay, so there we have.
So what was she saying? What was she saying? I didn't understand anything she was talking about.
Well, basically, she's the question put to her is, how does she see Trump as regards to his dealing with race? And basically, she's saying that, if somebody's a racist, don't call them a racist anymore, because there needs to be a conversation. So that means if somebody punch you in your face and thief your money, don't call him a robber. No, don't do that. Don't call him a robber.
Let's have a conversation. Yes, man. Come here, Mr. Robber. You took something from my pocket. It's funny. I've seen a number of interviews with black celebrities in America coming with that same type of vibe, which I do find interesting. It's almost like a diminishing of the black experience, which I find galling, to be honest with you, as if somehow, you have a situation where you're still oppressed, but you just have to carry on as normal. And yes, we can have a conversation, but I'm all right because in my grandfather's time, we end up being college educated, going to university, and I end up being Secretary of State. So it concerns me, but these people get there because black people who reach in a place of high status, rightly or wrongly, their community expect something towards them, not exclusively necessarily, but something that's going to better their situation, and not to be told, oh well, it needs to have a conversation, but don't call people names.
Very, very interesting point of view. A very good point as well, Tony. Now Chat Show says, Tony, you're hurting me right now. She's laughing out loud. Bless up, man. If you haven't watched the Now Chat Show, ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please tune in. Absolutely fantastic. 2 wonderful young ladies presenting such powerful topics of conversation. Now Chat Show, please, also right here on MediaNet Live TV. Carolyn says Colin Powell, the gentleman who was commander of the fleet, wasn't he? Commander in chief of all the military forces of the United States back when I do believe it was Bush was in power. What can we say? He went even that little bit further to distinguish himself from being black, where he even changed up the pronunciation of his name. Don't call me Colin. Nobody call me Colin, you know. Call me Cohen.
Is he not of Jamaican descent? He's of Jamaican descent, is he not? Colin Powell?
My name not Colin. My name not Colin, it's Colin. But then again, actually, that sounds more Jamaican, actually. Colin. Colin.
T-Smooth says it appears that their narratives are answerable to the powers that be. Yes, T-Smooth, that's exactly what it is.
However, could it possibly that they're also trying to apply strategy here to try and get the likes of the parties who they sit down with to kind of accept them on that kind of level, and then hopefully once they're in a position of power, they can make some effective change? No, possibly.
I agree with the first part of your reasoning, not the second part. That they do sit down with the parties to get some leverage, but the leverage is nothing to do with, justice for black people. None of these actors have ever been about that. It's again, it's the appearance. It's almost, Harris has been put there for black people to vote, to give their energies and their vote for the Democratic Party, because black people are traditionally tied to that party. And wheeling her out at a time when America is so divided, they can pretty much be assured of the black vote with having her there.
So,
right?
Could we say then, therefore, that probably one of the greatest in modern day history presidents of all time, probably I say he's probably the most liked president since JF Kennedy, Barack Obama. Could Barack Obama have been placed there as regards strategically to kind of ease the tension? And again, it would be interesting to know what was Barack's thoughts as regards to reparations, Tony?
Well, we do have a video. It's funny you should say that, right? So if our producer can find the first Barack Obama video, play that, because he was asked the very same question. So if we can play that, we can actually hear it from the horse's mouth.
This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality.
No, that one.
In doing so, they've reaffirmed that all Americans.
Not that one, the other one.
Do that as president.
Senator Obama, your position on reparations?
I think the reparations we need right here in South Carolina is investment, for example, in our schools. I did a town hall meeting in Florence, South Carolina, in an area called the Corridor of Shame. They've got buildings that students are trying to learn in that were built right after the Civil War. And we've got teachers who are not trained to teach the subjects they're teaching in, high dropout rates. We've got to understand that there are corridors of shame all across the country. And if we make the investments and understand that those are our children, that's the kind of reparations that are really going to make a difference in America right now.
Is anyone on the stage for reparations for slavery for African Americans? Are you?
I am. The Bible says we shall be and must be repairers of the breach. And a breach has occurred, and we have to acknowledge that. It's a breach that has resulted in inequality and opportunities for education.
So look at that. Mr. C, look at that. A white man says yes. Imagine that.
Well,
in front of the American public. This man is not thinking about, oh, I got to juggle the needs of all America. The man come out flat. I do.
Well, I think what we've got to look at, Tony, is the time when that particular question was asked. I think Obama was on his way to the White House, and if he'd said, yes, make a burn down Babylon and give back my people their things, I don't think he'd ever make it into the White House. They would have been afraid. Now, mate, he's gonna paint it black. They're gonna strum up speakers outside. It's gonna be like carnival 24/7.
So Donna says, of course, Mr. C, Mr. O was there for the same reasons. He would never have got there if he was not complicit. The USA would have to change their constitution to make black people a whole person, not 2/5. I think it's 3/5. Yeah, yes, but I agree with you. Yeah.
Very, very good point, Donna. Very good point. Yeah, I think Tony, well spotted, my brother. I think there seems to be a problem that we have, that it shows that even high flyers, people of color in positions, are still very wary about how they answer questions, where really and truly their answer should be very simple. Yes, there needs to be reparations. But I think that they honestly see the next part of that question as being very tricky, being an absolute landmine, and therefore they're not even entering into the discussion of that particular topic.
Okay, let me hold you there. Can we just play the other video that you were just playing just now with Obama, please? And notice
this morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality. In doing so, they've reaffirmed that all Americans are entitled to the equal protection of the law, that all people should be treated equally, regardless of who they are or who they love. This decision will end the patchwork system we currently have. It will end the uncertainty hundreds of thousands of same-sex couples face from not knowing whether their marriage, legitimate in the eyes of one state, will remain if they decide to move or even visit another. This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land. In my second inaugural address, I said that if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. It is gratifying to see that principle enshrined into law by this decision. This ruling.
Okay, that's enough. Okay, that's enough. I think we've read enough. We can stop the video. So the point being, you see, where is the agenda? See, you know, everybody's equal. Are they? Are black people equal?
Well, I think some problems in equality are easier to fix than others, where you can get a lot of. I mean, again, I think that's another strategic move there, which I think if I was a politician, I'd probably do exactly the same thing what Obama's just done there. Reasons being, number one, I'm gonna get a lot of kudos for doing it. Number two, how much is that gonna cost me? How much is that gonna cost out of my budget to implement that particular rule? Nothing at all. What's the love I'm going to get from it? I'm going to get love from. I'm going to get bonus points all over the place because of it. It doesn't cost him anything. When you try and patch the inequalities of black people, there's only one way you're going to do that. You're going to have to dig deep in your pocket, Master, because what you have to pay us is incomparable to anybody else. So, and I think this is why it is a difficult conversation to have. It's a difficult strategy to implement. But again, I think that we as a people, first and foremost, have to try and say how that change or how that reparation package will look. And if we haven't got a clue, I don't know how we expect anybody else to deliver it. Never mind.
You know, I have no problem with, you know, governments and leaders having to safeguard their citizens and looking after groups. What I hate all the time is how black people are constantly dismissed as whinging, belly aching, oppressed people who should get out there and get a job if you want to really improve yourself. And that, you know, this ethos that you have as much chance as everybody else, while being disproportionately killed by police, disproportionately black men in jail, and all the rest of it that comes with being part of this nation. And that's the part I don't like. Yes, okay, look after the groups that you want to look after because they're part of your nation. But to dismiss us or minimize or diminish the suffering and the ongoing struggle is what I detest from these politicians. And it hurts me a lot to see how our people, not probably because they're not aware, right? But they give their energy and their votes, because the votes are the power, to these people hoping. I remember when Obama came into power in 2008, people thought, my goodness, it's second coming of Christ the way they were going on. They thought things will get better.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I had a tear in my eye. I'm not even ashamed to say it. When I woke up the morning and I watched this guy actually win, I had a tear in my eye, because I thought to myself, there is a God. Because I didn't think it was something I'd see in my lifetime. However, when I think about it, what effect, what change did it bring to my people?
I remember when he was voting, me and this brother was arguing, man. Because I said to him, listen, nothing ain't gonna happen. Don't watch that. Oh, you're being so negative, man. We gotta be. I said, listen, you have to understand how the system works to understand. Just because you see a black face doesn't mean that they're working for you. They're working for other groups, because that's part of an ongoing agenda about how this world is run. But they're not working for you. And every time you come up to them and say, "What can we do?" No, well, they'll say, "No, well, we're not doing anything for black people. We're doing it for everyone. You're going to benefit as part of everyone."
As we
but we're still going to kill you in the streets. We're still going to throw you into prison.
Donna Ben says, black people will never get their dues. It would mean governments all over would have to admit what they had and are doing to us, and that can't happen. You must be crazy. So much money would have to share and no one at the top wants to give away their money. She also says, did the Jewish people have to explain what they were doing, what they were going to do with their reparations? I'm sure they didn't, but I don't know. One thing I would say is that the Jews probably had a strategy, and that's why it was implemented, because they effected change, not through begging or asking, but through implementing change a very strategic way. Now look,
I have to say, Mr. C, sorry, I can't completely disagree with you. I think they wanted to pay them. They paid out the Japanese in for what they suffered in America. As we know, they paid the slave masters, which we have all been paying for until 2015. Mm-hmm. When it comes to us, right, you're just not going to get it. That's it. There's no. You're not even getting an apology. You're not getting you're getting acknowledgement it happened. You're not getting any form of apology, and you're certainly not going to get a payout.
Well,
it's not because I don't believe it's because you don't know how to spend the money. It's not because you don't understand, because we're just not going to give it to you. And we can say, well, we don't have the money. You'd bankrupt the treasury if we gave it to you, or we can't trust that you're going to spend the money wisely. But the ultimate point, the point is, as we saw with Kamala Harris, if you think I'm going to be doing anything for black people alone, no. Obama says, no, I don't believe in reparations. There's a school down the road that's been there since the Civil War. We need to put money in that.
Well, I think I'm gonna disagree with yourself, Tony. I think that there will come a time when we will get it. We will.
Now listen. No, we actually agree on that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh no, we agree on that. We agree on that. The only difference is where you and I are concerned is how is that compensation going to come?
Yes.
That's the only.
Yes.
We're going to get it. Yes. We're going to get it. But it's how is this compensation going to come about? That's the question. But the whole point here is to highlight that when you put your energy in these politicians, hoping that you'll get a little something for your communities, in reality, they've got their emphasis is on other communities. That's all. That's what it is, and it becomes extremely disappointing when you've gone through all the effort to support and say, well, look, this is one of ours. Maybe he'll do even a little some also policies that will ease up the killings in the streets. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's just nothing but the same old. And then he directly tells you, no, I'm not just doing something for you. I'm doing it for everyone, and you might benefit from that.
No, look. Now Chat Show says, I'm with you, Tony. Never was gassed about Barack becoming president. The real leaders were Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, etc. I totally have to agree with you. Totally have to agree with you. Definitely. Donna Ben also says, I agree with you, Tony. It's not going to happen. So look, it's not going to happen. We're saying, I think there are definitely things that need to be fixed within our communities, both here and in the US of A, and again, all over the world. And I think, Tony, you hit a point there as regards to the inequalities. They're quick to sort out inequalities amongst other people at the drop of a hat. You know, I think that, again, when we come up with a strategy and we demand, for example, that any police officer who cold-bloodedly murders an innocent black person, mandatory jail time, mandatory. There's no ifs or no buts. If it's cold-blooded murder, then they should be afforded the same kind of sentence as any layman on the street who's committed cold-blooded murder. And until that happens, we know that there's no equality in this particular world for people of color, for black people. Not even trying to be politically correct for black people. So these are the things that we need to be saying. These are the things, you know, for me, walking up and down the street with placards in our hands saying Black Lives Matter, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. We need to be very specific as regards to what change we wish to see. We need to be very specific in what we are demanding to happen as a people, not asking, but demanding. And we need to very clearly say to people, this is the standard, what we want. And if this doesn't happen, there will be consequences. And this is the language we need to be talking, as far as I'm concerned anyway. Until then, and until I see a politician speaking in those kind of terms, they're all the same, as far as I'm concerned. It's a job, it's a game, and they're there to play the game to benefit themselves.
So, Hadriana asks, do you think it's because we don't have the financial and influences to demand the change? Yeah, that's partly to do with it.
Good question. Good question.
If you've been really paying attention to the history that we've been talking about, it's all tied into that. It's just that even though we've been talking about this week after week, it's hard for a lot of us to make the links between the past and the present. You see, because even the way we're talking now, we're talking about, you know, some form of protest or getting power or doing this or doing that. But if you remember the history that we've been talking about, there's a reason why you are powerless. There's a and those reasons are tied into your history. That's the problem. See?
Donna Ben says, yes, Hadriana, and we will never be allowed to get there. White privilege is scared we will do to them what they did to us. That is the heart of racism, to be honest with you. Oh gosh, I lost the point I was just about to say. But yeah, no, Tony, I totally agree with you. You have been demonstrating and the chart of our history. Do we think that over here that we will find politicians who will be able to get it right? As we've seen, like a lot of black politicians in America seem to duck the question and duck the issues. I mean, obviously we had the greats like Bernie Grant who would never duck a question or an issue. What do we think about the new set of black Tory politicians who are coming through? Is there some hope there?
Who are you thinking of specifically, Mr. C?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about, you know, the likes of Kwasi Kwarteng, for example, who he's now Secretary for State of Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy. He's now a senior member of the Tory party. Could he be possibly one day the future Prime Minister of this country?
Well, he's certainly a very eloquent and intelligent politician. There's no doubt about that. But I think politics sits on a platform of a system, and I think the system has a script, and you mustn't deviate from the script.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably why Bernie Grant didn't get any further and was pretty much sidelined the way he was, because, you know, of his straightforward views. You know, they said you got to play along to get along. Mm-hmm. That's politics, isn't it? Right? You know, black people, the subject of black people is categorized as either being, you know, you belong to a group called diversity, or you're part of left wing, right? Or you're part of identity politics, right? All of these things, which have negative connotations, is how you're grouped when you're being spoken about, right, in the political classes. You're never going to be allowed to sit on your own platform, stand on your own platform, to fight for your rights. You're always going to be lumped and grouped with others who are then going to leapfrog over you, and in half a century will achieve more than was achieved in 500 years.
I mean, look, history has shown us already that if you take the kind of stance of Bernie Grant or even Diane Abbott, the media over here is going to absolutely tear you to shreds. I mean, Bernie Grant, they called him loony. God knows what else they called him. They made him look as though he was a buffoon. And here we have Boris Johnson, who is a buffoon, the actual prime minister. So you're going to need your people behind you, man. You're going to need your people behind you. S-Bit McCoy says, I'll be honest with you. We would have had our reparations a long time ago if we was not subconsciously distracted. If we utilize the right label and language in our requests, stop saying slaves, say prisoners of war, very good point, and claim damages as the remedies for reparations, layman solutions, because of all others have had reparations not just once, but twofold, even the Native Americans recently. So funds is not the reason, it's an excuse. We are always deflected or dismissed through gestures.
Thank you for that very insightful comment.
Definitely prisoners of war. I think we need to stop calling ourselves slaves. 100%. 100%. It doesn't show us in our true light. We were prisoners of war, a war that we didn't even know we was involved in the war. You know?
Donna says this will never happen. Either we are so fractured as a people, it's sad. Don't give up hope, Donna.
Yeah.
In the history is where you're going to find the answer to the future. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
100%.
It's the whole reason why we've been talking about the history. It's not because you can use this information as a pub quiz. It's because I'm trying to lead you to understand. If you understand how you got here, you can actually chart a course to the future.
So look, as you said, a pub quiz. I've got a little quizzical questions to ask just before we let the excellent Tony Crossbody take us into the Black History Studies. So question number 1, how many Black members are in the Conservative Party? Just type a number. How many Black people are in the Conservative Party at the moment? How many Black people? Tony, would you like to hazard a guess?
I'm going to hazard a guess and say 15.
15.
Okay. So let's play higher or lower.
Caroline says lower than 15. She says 13. 13. Higher. Anybody say higher?
Oh, Sharon Spice gives
us
no. 3. Angela Tozer says 6. Rackstone is getting lower, higher. I'll take
Caroline,
2 more.
Tequila, man. She said 13.
Yeah, active Black members of the Conservative Party are how many? 2 more numbers, and then I should reveal the answer. Angela, she didn't even put a number. She just laughed. Sandra Henry says 7, and Donna Ben says 3. Jarena Star says there's a bunch of sellouts with it.
Jarena, not easy.
Oh my days. No, stop it. Whoever just texted me and said, I don't know how many members, Black members there are in the Conservative Party. but I know there's a lot more coconuts than what they are black people. Oh, father.
Oh boy.
Right. Now chat show says 17. SB McCoy says 6. Anne-Marie says 11. Oh, Father have mercy. The correct number, ladies and gentlemen, is 22. So I believe Jackie Pearson is the closest. Yes, 22.
Wow.
Black members of the Tory party. Anybody would like to guess how many members of the Labour Party are black? The Labour Party.
I'll say about 38.
Oh, good. 38 says Tony. I'm so glad that you said more than the Tories, bruv, because I would be. If I just said the Tories have got 22. Donovan says, and what are they doing for week?
Oh, Donna, we got Donna. Yeah, Donna asked the right question, man.
Sharon Gibson would like to know, who are these 22? They're so black we can't see them. Sharon Spice Gibson says 42. Carolyn says 35. Now chat show says 23. But McCoy says 103.
What?
Oh, we wish.
That's ambitious.
We wish. Tony, hazard a guess.
I said 38.
You said 38.
Yeah.
So, listen, the person who was the closest was Sharon Spice Gibson. There's actually 41 Labour,
well done, Sharon.
Labour MPs. So well done, Sharon. You wasn't too far off, Tony, with 38 though.
Yeah, I guessed it. Yeah.
I'm saying this because what I find interesting is that the Tories have got 22 now, which is, I was shocked when I found out that they had 22, because they're not saying they're very first one, but they're very first one of modern times. We have 2005. That's when they started to have. I think they had 2005. They had 2 black MPs, the Conservative Party, and they've steadily increased over the years. Whereas Labour broke the mold. Guess when? Not in 2005. Guess when Labour broke the mold as regards to black MPs, and we should all know who these black MPs were as well. We can start with the names, and then we'll work out the numbers. We'll work out the year afterwards. So, Tony, I'm going to go to you first.
No, well, I know the answer because you already told me.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. First black Labour MPs were, ladies and gentlemen, what a week. Fraternity. Carolyn Samuda Simmons says chucker. You can chucker that answer in the bin, Carolyn. More black men have gone Conservative now. Definitely.
Yeah, there's been a drive by the Conservative Party to recruit more black people. Definitely.
That's what I mean by strategy, ladies and gentlemen. Carolyn says Bernie Grant. Definitely, he was definitely one of those in that particular year. I've mentioned the other lady's name as well, along with Bernie Grant. One woman, one black woman. She's still around now. Okay, just the time. Didn't hear the question properly. No worries. I was saying the names of the black MPs.
Anne-Marie's got it.
Oh, Diane Abbott, Bernie Grant. Wonderful. Absolutely. Those were the names I was looking for. And the late 80s, correct. Late 80s, 1987. So 18 years before the Conservative Party had a black MP, Labour was already leading the way. And of course, the other person who we seem to forget is Paul Boateng as well, who was the first, I forgot what they call them now, when your party's won and you get a proper seat, proper job title. What's it called, Tony, when you're on, not chambers, oh gosh.
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that after 40 years
Yeah.
of being part of that generation that came in, it took 40 years to get an MP. So
yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
And the other person was a gentleman by the name of Keith Vaz, but I tend not to include him because he was South Arabian, but he was the other person of color. So there was 4 in Labour in 1987. But look, so we're going to move on now from the past to the future and possibly a bit of history, a lot of history. We're going to hand over to Tony Crossbody, ladies and gentlemen. He's been taking us on a wonderful journey of our history, of our past, and most importantly, our future. So please show your appreciation for Tony Crossbody. What do you got for us, Tony? What have you got?
Well, I want to just recap on a couple of things that we discussed last week. You know, it's interesting because indoctrination, as we've discussed, is a very, very powerful thing. You see, we can be indoctrinated and we can learn something new, but after a little while, we actually fall back into that indoctrinated teaching, you see. And this happens quite a lot because when you've had a deep depth of introduction of indoctrination, particularly like we discussed through the school system, through the church system, and through the TV and social media, it embeds itself in your mind as the truth. And this is why for a very long time, as a people, we've been sort of completely lost with regard to this whole thing about identity. The best we have is this idea that we are Africans, right? Because, of course, many of those who were taken as prisoners of war were taken out of Africa. So the conclusion is you're African. However, if you accept that premise, there were people that were taken all over Africa, not just from the West, but from the East, but from Central, and even from the South. Therefore, by that reasoning, none of you watching this show are related because you were taken from Africa, which is a continent of 1.4 billion people with thousands of different nations and tribes and clans. And so even though you were taken to the Caribbean, right, the African theory suggests that you have nothing in common. You were just a random group of tribes and peoples that were taken on ships and enslaved. So, you know, for example, the Ewe people are not the same as the Kikongo people, who are not the same as other tribes who were taken away into slavery. These are all disparate groups that were in the continent of Africa, according to the way we've been taught history. So since they were taken from different parts of Africa, there is actually no unifying nationality that binds them together. So theoretically, those of us who are descendants of those who were taken as prisoners of war actually have nothing to do with each other as a people. I wonder if you understand what I'm saying here. I'm saying that the conventional way that we've been taught about history suggests that actually none of us have anything in common, simply because we were taken from very different parts of Africa and it was different peoples that were taken. It's only now, because we're having a similar experience, that we're saying, well, now we're one people. But the reality is, if you fall in line with the whole thing about you were taken from Africa, then actually we have nothing to do with each other than this experience we're having. So what I am saying is, no, I don't accept that theory, because there's evidence on the ground, and we can find a paper trail that leads you back to a very specific people of ancient times.
Okay.
And we've been discussing them for the last few weeks, and you'll find me repeating myself because it's important for you to understand this.
As I
that
say,
you are united by something, you just don't realize it, and it's not the continent of Africa in itself, and it's not about being black. or having melanin in your skin.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Right?
they say repetition is the mother of all success. So repeat it, Tony. Repeat it.
You are tied by blood. And we're going to just go over it again today because, interestingly, you know, that discussion that we just had about the politicians and what they're doing and so forth, you see, will tend to leave us in a situation where we're hopeless and we have no answers as to why this is happening, or the fact that we're never going anywhere. But history dictates otherwise. History is very, very important. When you have a sick patient and the doctor comes to your bed, the first thing the doctor wants to see is the case notes. Why? The doctor wants to know the history of your condition. Who have you seen before? What have you been eating? What other hospitals have you been in? Why does a doctor do this? Because understanding the history of a sick patient is the key to treatment.
Good analogy, Tony. Very good analogy.
You cannot live in the present and try to decipher your situation from a present situation. What is happening to you today started a long time ago, of which you only have very sketchy information. So for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, you are welcome. Some of the things you're going to hear me say this evening might be difficult for you to absorb. I can only encourage you, please. You can go back into the previous studies that we've done, where I have outlined the identity of the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade in great detail with sources. So understand this. You have a very specific identity. So we discussed some of it last week, but we discussed how there's another group of people who also say they have that identity. So let's just cover it quickly, and then we're going to go into some detail. So if we can just roll the first slide, please.
Another area in Africa who have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today, who are white, Caucasian people, came in a little bit later on.
I want to discuss it. So here we have a Jewish rabbi and historian admitting that those who were involved in the transatlantic slave trade are the original Israelites of the Bible. Now, it's kind of hard for a lot of people to get their heads around that, because when you think of Israel, or you think of the land of Israel, next slide, please. When you think of the people who you consider to be the people of the Bible, this is what you think about. This is your conditioning. So it's very difficult for you to make that association with black people and Israel, because to you, this is Israel. Okay? So we want to just cover what their own historians have said about their history to show you where you fit in. Next slide.
Okay, today's topic is really bizarre. It's one of the most unusual chapters in this long history of the Jewish people. It's the story of the massive 8th century conversion of entire kingdom, Khazaria, to Judaism. Wow. So why did they become Jewish? What happened to them? You know, it's a really an amazing story. If you look at this first slide here, you see the green area is roughly the range of Khazarian influence. It's a massive region in the area of what would be called, let's say, Ukraine, a good chunk of Russia, the Caucasus mountain regions, Georgia, Azerbaijan, places like that. And this region was Jewish for about 500 years. Wow, how did that happen? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's look at it in a little more detail. So first of all, perhaps you have come across the story of the Khazars through this book, the Sefer HaKuzari, written by the great Spanish Jewish poet Yehuda Halevi. This is a 12th century work that is quite a bit later than the actual conversion of the Khazars, which is dated to the year 740. But it essentially tells the story of why this King Bulan of Khazaria converted to Judaism. Now, what's really important to understand about this, though, is that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi was not trying to write a history book. This is a work of Jewish philosophy. If you want, it's a work of comparative religion. It's not intended to be an accurate historical account of the conversion. The story goes like this, as presented in the Kuzari, but basically it's, you know, in brief, it really is what happened. This King Bulan, a pagan living in his capital of Itil, which is on the northern part of the Caspian Sea, he wonders about, you know, what is religious verity, and he decides he's going to hear from all of the great monotheistic faiths. He feels like it's time for himself and his people to move on from paganism, and clearly monotheism is a burgeoning trend, and therefore he says, okay, let's find out about, you know, what's going on with the monotheistic faiths. He calls for a debate between the 3 great Western faiths, that is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And he has all of the figures discuss the historical elements of their faith. And ultimately, after he hears all of them, he decides that Judaism makes the most sense, and he converts himself, and his entire nation follows him into Judaism. That's the basic story as presented in the Kuzari. Now, why Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote it, and he could only write it really within the very special environment of Spain, which had large Muslim and Christian populations, was to give Jews an opportunity to defend their faith against the arguments of the other 2 great monotheistic faiths. And by couching it within a historical...
Good. So, this man is a scholar. He's a Jewish scholar and rabbi. And he's saying, look, there was this nation that converted to Judaism. Now we're gonna talk about who was responsible for that conversion. And I'm gonna show you examples of how we're still doing that today, converting other peoples into spiritual lifestyles that we create. I'll show you. But notice, he does not deny the story that his people came from a land, he said, in the Ukraine area, and they were converted. Next slide, please. And so, this article came out, I think it was 2011 or somewhere about that, where a scientist, an Israeli scientist, who did tests on these people, found that their roots were not in the region of what we now know today as Israel. Now, there's been a great clamor from that community who claim yes, it is. They have dismissed these findings as not being true, and you know it's a conspiracy, etc., etc. So they admit, of course, they're not from there. The DNA says they're not from there. So let's look at a historian who specializes in Hebrew, Hebrew culture, right? He travels around the world meeting all these Hebrew groups, Let's see what he had to say about DNA testing. Next slide.
Jewish priest is called Cohen. Everybody here knows somebody called Mr. Cohen. Now, Mr. Cohen, in theory, would be descended from the original priests who 2,500 years ago officiated in the temple in Jerusalem. That was the idea. So we did a big experiment. We collected many Cohens from all over the world, and what we discovered really was a corroboration of this tradition, that over half of the Cohen population descended from a particular individual, and that particular individual lived somewhere in the area of Palestine, Israel, 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago is more or less the time when Moses lived, and it was Moses' brother, Aaron, who was the founder of the priesthood. So this was a pretty neat piece of research. And a particular haplotype, a particular signature, a family signature of the Cohens was known to exist and did exist. So then, when we started looking more closely at the stuff coming out of the Lemba DNA, in one of the clans, their priestly clan, you remember the clan that carried something like the Ark over Africa, what did we discover? We discovered that the same proportion of that clan had this rare haplotype as did Cohens throughout the world. Again, this was a pretty extraordinary moment. So it was fair to say that the origins of the Lemba were indeed Jewish. We knew where Senna was, and we knew how they got there more or less. The implications of this piece of research were quite considerable. They were certainly significant for the Lemba people, because when they were first discovered or come across in the 19th century by British colonists, they were forced pretty much to become Christians, like everybody else in the area. As soon as the DNA research came through, they stopped, in many cases, being Christian. They abandoned the church and they started creating synagogues. So in terms of their identity, the genetic research was massively influential. And so it seemed to me that this kind of research, at least in my area, was possible of delivering not only a kind of historical authenticity, but also a sort of social justice. In another case, I had been working with a tribe of so-called maybe Jews, small black men who live in and around Mumbai in Western India, who'd always been absolutely on the fringe of anything Jewish, and nobody took their claim to be Jewish in any way seriously. And we did a big DNA-based piece of research on this group, and we discovered that indeed their claim to be of an Israelite population was true. And the night that this was revealed, there'd been a huge article in the Times of India the day before. The people spilled out into the streets, and they were singing, and they were dancing, and they were rejoicing all night. As one of them said to me afterwards, it was as if the Messiah had come. They felt a sense of vindication, a sense of authenticity, which they'd never had before. One of the other impacts was that this kind of technology and this way of looking at history spread all over the world, of course, through the internet. And one day I was in my hotel room in Sydney. I was lecturing.
So the point here that this historian, Tudor Parfitt, that's his name, he basically travels the world and investigates Jewish communities, went into South Africa, into Zimbabwe, where the Lemba people live. Now, that's something to research. Lemba, L-E-M-B-A. And as he said, they did testing on the Lemba and found out that not only were they related to the ancient Israelites, but a specific part of their clan was related to the priesthood. There was a specific gene they had that tied them back to Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first high priest of Israel. And then he goes on to say how he went to India. And he said small black men who were basically nobody was paying them no mind. They were tested and they were also found to be Israelites. So what's going on here? Why do we have two different groups vying for the same nationality? We'll get to that in a second. But for those of you from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, you're going to like this next slide. Let's roll it.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
One of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots of them. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were with Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now. So what happened is, as the Jews were scattered, primarily after the destruction of the temple by the Romans and then the final.
So do you remember, Mr. C, a few weeks ago, we looked up articles, you actually read it yourself, didn't you, that about the first Jamaicans, or the first those who were taken as prisoners of war to Jamaica in 1513.
Yeah, this is from the Catholic Inquisition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They were taken out of Portugal. That's why some of you who are Jamaicans, you will have heard your relatives refer to themselves as Portuguese. The gentleman in that video we just watched clarified that by saying they were the Sephardic Jews. Remember that expression, the Sephardic Jews were the Jews who lived in Spain and Portugal during the Inquisition. These were black Jews. Now, interestingly, I came across an article just by accident yesterday. Next slide, if we can pull it up. And it was a newspaper article out of Israel, which said basically that a decision was given by the World Federation of Jewry, who decide who are Jews and who are not. Mr. C, would you read that for us? Can you see it?
Yeah, if you can just enlarge that for me, please, management. Ugandan Jews not eligible to immigrate to Israel. State informs High Court. I can't read the others.
That's all right. No, that's all right. You don't have to read it. It's just a highlight. It's fine. But the whole point is that there were these group of Jews out of Uganda, and basically, what can happen if you are a Jew from Africa, wherever, you can make a claim to live in Israel, but they have to qualify you to say that you are actually Jewish, right? And initially, when they put their case forward, it was agreed that they were Jewish. It was subsequently overturned. And this is why we're reading this article, because they were refused. Next slide. But where it really gets interesting, right? Where it really gets interesting, I'll read this, right? It talks about how other communities, Jewish communities around the world, should be threatened now, because now they have been refused, any future applications might have the same result, right? Go halfway down where it says this would include B'nai Asunim, and these are descendants of Jews forced to convert during the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions. So we're back to that Portugal and Spain again. So indirectly, this Israeli newspaper is connecting the application of black Jews to come to their land with the descendants who were converted or who were forced to convert and had to flee Spain and Portugal. These were black Jews.
It also says as well as communities that claim descent from the lost Israelite tribes and entire communities of converts in South America.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that the history bears out, the DNA bears out this whole idea that the original Israelites were a dark-skinned people. Now, I'm going to show you something.
I just before you do that, Tony, I just want to kind of again just deal with this, because what's happening here, this again, it seems to be another form of strategy where they're going to make sure that this case, they don't win this case, so that it becomes law and precedent in laws to stop any black people from going, black Jews from being able to go to Israel and claim domicile, to be domiciled in Israel. So again, that's why they're making sure that they fail and that it's recorded in the High Court, and then it can be used as precedent. But sorry, Tony, just wanted to point that out. It'd be interesting to keep an eye on this case to see what happens.
Good point. And thank you, Angela, for dropping that that link in there. If anybody wants to have a look at it, it's a really interesting story there. So the point being, you see, you got to remember that many certain parts of Africa, and not all, but some parts obviously are very, very poor, and some of these Israelites live in those regions, so they would look to Israel as not only their spiritual home, but obviously a place where they can improve their life. So their desire is to go there and to share in their worship in the land of Israel. But of course, there is a body there that decides whether or not they can come in based upon whether they feel that they are genuine, right? Now, here's the thing. So you have two groups of people claiming one particular heritage. Now, how did that happen? I'm going to show you how it happens today. I'm going to show you how the same thing happens today, and then you might get it, okay? How you have two disparate groups of people claiming the same heritage. And the story I'm about to show you is exactly what happened in the past, okay? So, next slide. Can anybody tell me what we're looking at here?
Eric Benet on a bad hair day?
What are we looking at? Mr. C, what are we looking at here? If you just looked at it casually without trying to read too much into it, what is that?
It looks like an Arabian dreadlock. Arabian Rasta?
Okay, next slide. Try again.
Oh, okay. Yes. So
what is that?
A white Rasta.
Right. Black people, have you ever heard of white Rastas? They do exist. Exactly. And Rastafarians. These are Rastafarians. Now you're going to say, oh, there's no such thing as white Rasta. No, I'm sorry, there is.
Yeah, there's a few.
There's more than a few, Mr. C, especially in Europe.
Okay.
Right? Right? It's a growing culture. Now, question. How did they become Rasta? Who taught them Rasta philosophy, Rasta liberty, Rasta culture? Who taught them?
Thingy Bob Campbell, UB40, Rat in My Kitchen.
Right.
That's what happened when you're smoking seeds and you're listening to UB40.
Right.
Seriously though, who taught them, Tony?
Who taught them? The answer is Black Rastas taught them. Next slide.
So God forbid, are we trying to say that, who knows, in 50...
No, don't take the steam, bro.
Okay.
Don't take the steam.
Okay.
You're seeing it. I want the audience to feel it.
I'll pause.
Right? Right? Black Rasta, there's certain segments of Black Rastafarians that taught white people who were interested in Rastafarian lifestyle, how to be Rasta. There's a specific book on it, as you can see on your screen. You cannot be Rasta unless you understand the concepts. You can't pretend by looking from afar. You have to be taught. Next slide. So that book is one of the manuals that would help white people to get into Rastafari living. I know it sounds incredible, and I'm sure Rasta people watching this say, no, man, stupidness and da. But this really does exist. And we know that they are white Rastas, and we know that they are white Rastas, especially those people who go to modern day roots dances, right? Or if you go to Carnival, you see them sound systems, and you will see a lot of them there. And they know a lot about Rastafarian lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the big reggae festivals in Europe, the Gil Reggae Festival, for example.
Right.
Yeah, you'll be surprised. You'll be
Right.
very, very much surprised.
Right. Next slide. Right? They even have sound system. Some of them are musicians. They know a lot about Rasta living, and they live that. And imagine they have children they are also going to teach the Rasta lifestyle. Now, I know it sounds like an oxymoron, because Rastafari is really about, it sits on the base of Pan-Africanism and black liberation. But that's neither here nor there as far as these people are concerned. They want to live that lifestyle, and therefore they learn it. To learn it, you have to be taught it. Next slide. And they're very serious about their practice, right? So, Sport Billy, yes, good evening, sir. How you doing? Says Rastafari is not about color, right? So this is what Rasta say. They say that it's not about color, and therefore anybody who wants to know the liberty and have a clean heart can learn, right? But I'm showing you this for a reason. I'm showing you this for a reason. Now, just think for a second. In 1,000 years' time from now, when the history books are being written, and under Rastafarian, whose picture do you think you're going to see there? Whose picture do you think you're going to see there? With an increasing white Rasta population, right? Who are the people that are going to say that we are the Rasta in 1,000 years from now in the history books? And what I'm trying to show you is that this is exactly what happened with the original Jews. They taught their spiritual faith to a nation of people. They showed them the whole ropes. That nation is now telling you, we are the originals. You see? Some of us might say, well, someone might argue, well, this is they might say, well, this was cultural appropriation. But the point being here is, you see, they want to learn and live in that way, and there are teachers out there ready to teach. And what they do then is then pass the teaching amongst themselves with slight amendments, right, to cater for their ideology. But it's the same. It's exactly the same as to what happened 1,000 years ago, as we heard the rabbi say, that a whole nation was converted, and they took it very, very seriously. And they took it so seriously that nobody even checked for who the original people were. Right? So I'm hoping that by using this as an example, I'm showing you how we as a people will teach other groups the things we have, the inner workings, and then those groups will take that. It's a standard playbook. It happens all the time. So we've seen from the DNA evidence, that is from the Lemba and from various other black tribes within Africa, that they are descended from the Israelites. We've had a Jewish rabbi say that those who were taken across the ship into the ocean are probably, or maybe, right?
It's a hard pill thing to swallow.
Right, the original Israelites, right? Now, question is, Can we find anything in the Bible that can give us some clarity about who is who?
Oh, a little bit of biblical scripture to back it up would be lovely, Tony. Thank you.
Next slide, Mr. C, and you can do us a pleasure of reading that for us. Revelation chapter 2, verse 9.
Reads, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not.
Stop. Thank you. So if you read Revelation, it's talking to the people of God, right? The Israelites. He says, I know your works and your tribulation and poverty. Isn't that the situation that we have? Right? He says, but thou art rich. In reference to the spiritual riches, your inheritance. What you really have, but you yet understand. And then he points out that there is a certain people who are identifying themselves as Jews. Who would that be? But he goes on to say, but they are not. They are not. So if they are not, the question is, who are? Who are? Because there is a vacancy for someone to take up the position of being part of a nation that was set up a long time ago. A nation still existing on earth today who have no idea who they are except something going back 500 years. A nation which DNA proves, history proves, and the Bible proves that they are these original people. Next slide. Now, for your homework, because
homework, I like it, Tony. Give them homework. Yes,
I need to give some homework because
good.
You lot come on here and just want to be entertained. No, you got homework to do. I want you to go on this site here. Okay, it's called slavevoyages.org. What is it about? Slavevoyages.org is the culmination of 20 to 30 years of work by historians, librarians, and record keepers, and has a large manifest of passengers that were taken in the transatlantic slave trade. This is available online for you to check. And I really want you to check this out, black people. Don't listen to what I'm saying. You know, don't look for it for yourself. Get your kids involved. Get your family. All of you are part of this. Slavevoyages.org. Screenshot the screen right now or write this down and make a note of it. I implore you to check this for yourself.
Yeah. Take a picture with your phones if you're watching it on the TV.
Now, some of you who are quick on the keyboard, you might want to do this now while I talk you through it, because you're going to find something very interesting. But for those of you who can do this later. Now, if what I'm telling you is correct, on this database, okay, on this database, which has the manifest of ships that have enslaved peoples on there, we should be able to type Hebrew names in the search, because these are all their original names. This is not the names that they were given when they got to the other side. This is the original names they had. We should be able to type in Hebrew names in the search box and find a passenger list. Now, let me explain something to you very quickly before we go to the next slide. Hebrew names often had the name of God written within them, right? So what is the name of God? So in the Bible, in the Hebrew, it's Yah, spelled Y-A-H. Rastaman say Jah, but in English, the Hebrew don't use the letter J, it's Y, Yah, right? So when you say hallelujah, you're saying praise Yah, right? So Yah is the name of God. Now, the Hebrews had a habit of always having God's name within their own name. So you would have something like Jeremiah, Hezekiah, right? Joshua, right? So these names had various meaning. So if you went to the Slave Voyages website and typed the name of God, which is Y-A-H, which is a very specific Hebrew name, In the search, what happens? Next slide. What you have is a whole passenger list turns up on your screen. Can you see that? All of those names incorporate the YAH, name of God, within their names. And I think for this example, there's about 10 pages of manifest. These are all Hebrew names. Slavevoyages.org. Have a look at that. Have a look at some Hebrew names and play around. It's you have to click African names database. You notice even the site says African names, right? They won't say it says African names database. Hit that, and then in the search box, find some Hebrew names and type them in the search. See what comes up. Next slide.
Wow.
Here is another example, right? I use the prefix IEL, right? Which is another Hebrew suffix that was often used in Hebrew names. So you have Ezekiel, Daniel, right? This IEL phrase was often used in Hebrew names. When you put that in a search box, what happens? A whole passenger list of prisoners of war turns up. What's the coincidence? What are the chances of that? How coincidental is it that Hebrew names would turn up on a manifest for those who are victims of the transatlantic slave trade? How is that possible? So, going back to our discussion earlier when we were looking at the politicians and talking about why they're not fighting for us, you have to understand the history before you can understand the answer about why all this stuff is happening to you. It's not a coincidence, right? You have a sick patient. The doctor looks at his notes and say, I understand why this patient is sick. Look, when you know why the patient is sick, you can then administer the medicine to make them better. But if you try to work out why the patient is sick without looking at the notes, you're not going to get anywhere. Right? That's why for so long, Black people are basically running on a treadmill. You're moving, but you're not going nowhere. Because you just do not understand who you are. Because when you understand who you are, you understand why these things are happening to you, and then you can also see the future and what it holds. But if you keep saying, "Oh, I'm from Africa and we came from Africa," well, basically you're going to remain lost, because Africa is a far bigger continent for everybody to be related, unless you come from a specific bloodline, which you can find on slavevoyages.org, which the Bible tells you the people who say they are you are not you, who the scientists are saying you've got their DNA, to the rabbis who are saying, yes, we converted. How much evidence, Black people, do you need? What do you want? You're going to keep chasing your tail for the rest of your life, you and your kids and your grandkids, having no idea about your history. Your history is the answer to your future. That's why any fight for reparations you want to make on your own will fail. It will fail. However, you will be getting reparations. You will be getting it. But you will not be getting it by the political means and the marching and the protesting and all those desires you have to start bank schools and make... No. Unless you understand the foundation, you cannot put up a building. And many people, even historians, try to put up a building without the foundation of identity. That is where the secret lies. So I want you to go home Do some homework. Look up slavevoyages.org. Come back, tell us what you found. And interestingly, any one of you out there who's recently done a DNA test, if you would like, you can get in touch with me, either on Instagram or Facebook, Tony Crossbody, and I will decipher your DNA test for you.
There you go. Live on What a Week. You heard it.
I am so supremely confident that I can look at your DNA results and chart the history for you. And I'll probably even do it on the show if you'd like. I could do it anonymously or say your name. It's up to you. But there is such a mountain of evidence that proves what I am saying. We need to break out from this indoctrination of that we're nobody and we're scattered from Africa, we don't know who we are and we're being trampled on. No. We've got to start moving away from that narrative. You are someone. You are a very ancient and holy people. You just don't know it.
I've got to say thank you, Angela, for putting the website up there. Thank you very much. Now Chat Show says showing 1 to 200 out of 822 for Yah. Wow.
Thank you, No Chat Show. Thank you, Angela. Angela's our wonderful. Angela's our secret assistant. You know. I know.
We've got Angela. We've got to get you on the show one day.
Yeah, man. Get Angela on the show. But Mr. C, can you see when you see people will listen to this and they will say, "Oh, wonderful, it's great."
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll go back and watch telly or get on whatever they're doing. They'll see something else happening with black people. It's like, "Oh, why are we always like that? We're never going to get on." They forget. This is what indoctrination does to you. That's why I keep banging on about this. I keep banging on that because I'm hoping that this is going to stick. They say, apparently, psychologists say you have to hear something at least 8 times before it starts to make sense. And we have to keep hearing this because this is the root of our problem and this is the root of our future. You got no friends. Nobody's going to be, no black politicians are going to come and save you. No black movement is going to come and create a revolution. It's never going to happen. That's only fanciful thinking and dreaming. Your roots are tied to these ancient people. The Bible is very specific about why you're in this condition, why you were thrown out here, and what the future holds. So check the homework. Look at you can actually check these books if you want more references. Come back next week. Gonna get some more, but let us know what you found. And if you've got DNA results, as I said, that you'd like me to interpret for you, hit me up, Tony Crossbody, Instagram or Facebook, and we can break it down. Look at the histories.
Well, look, Angela Cozier says my mum did her DNA, and I will get the results. So that might be our very first one. So. Tony, man, what a revelation. Again, for those of you who may be a little bit challenged with your eyesight, the book on display here is Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams. Tony, closing words, closing thoughts.
You're a special people. You just don't know it yet. But you need to know. Your kids need to know. Your grandchildren need to know. This is not just for you because watching the show, right? This is for all those people who have descended from those who were taken as prisoners of war over the Atlantic and who are in the UK today. This is for you.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful, Tony. I've got to say thank you for that. I will be literally, as soon as we finish this broadcast, I'll be jumping on slavevoyages.org to see all the revelations that you've just revealed to us. Ladies and gentlemen, for each and every single one of you who've joined in the conversation this evening, we thank you. So many of you to name individually, but again, a big shout out to our sisters, presenters, Now Chat Show. Please, can you just drop that in, Kaz? When your show is on, it's just gone at the top of my head so that our viewers are aware of what day and what time your show is on as well, please. You can just quickly drop that into the chats. ladies and gentlemen, Tony has set you some homework. For those of you who complete the homework, I will let you know over a period of the next 3 to 4 weeks, those who have completed the most amounts of homework set by Tony or myself will win a very, very special prize. All shall be revealed in a couple of weeks' time. But until then, please, ladies and gentlemen, remember to like, subscribe, and to share. But most importantly, do your own research. Do not just take the words of myself and those of Tony Crossbody, but please, we implore you to do your own research, make your own findings, but most importantly, share it amongst your family and friends. And we'll catch you here next week on What a Week to discuss more topics and viewpoints from a Black perspective without dilution, and most importantly, with you, our viewers, in mind throughout whatever we discover and share. My name's been Mr. C.
Tony Crossbody.
This has been What a Week, right here, MediaNet Live TV. Take care, God bless, and we'll catch you next week, 7 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.